Yes.
Welcome back to the 150K podcast. I'm your host, Joe Graham, where we help take your dreams to six figures and beyond. Today, I have with me special guest Joel Weldon, Speak to Grow Your Business. Now, I met you through Dr. Dorine. She sent me an email saying, I got to get you on. Then we talked, I want to say about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and just kind of seeing if it would be a good fit. And now we have you on. But in your own words, who are you and who do you help?
Well, Joe, that's a great question. And that's how most podcasts begin. So as you're listening to this podcast, you don't really care who I am. Matter of fact, you don't care at all anything about me. And the reason you're listening to this podcast is you want something for yourself. You want to know, does this guy, whatever his name is, know something or have something that's going to help me have a better life, make even more sales, have the kind of life that you've been dreaming of? And if that's what this is about, then I'm all in. Does that make sense to you as you're listening? And the same thing applies to you. No one cares about you. They don't care about your why. They don't care about your passion. They want to know, if you've got something to sell, how is it going to help me? And you know that old acronym, but they used to call it, Joe, the old radio station, WII-FM. What's in it for me? And one of my great friends, Joe Polish, founder of Genius Network, wrote a wonderful book that kind of goes beyond that, is what's in it for them. And that really should be your mindset anytime you're making a presentation, whether you're speaking to a group about something other than sales, or if it's about your product or service, what's in it for them? That's the key. Now, what gives me the right to talk about this? I've been doing this a long time, but I'm a professional speaker, inducted into the National Speakers Hall of Fame, an original founder of that organization back in 1974. So I've been speaking professionally for 50 years, been paid to speak at over 3,000 events, and have coached over 10,000 speakers. None of them really speakers, except a handful. Most of them are using speaking to grow their business, to increase their sales. So as you're listening, you speak all the time, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's a committee, whether it's a board meeting, if it's a major investment that you're asking an organization to make, or maybe at a formal meeting for your own company because you're the number one salesperson, or at least you want to be, and you know you're going to have to make that talk someday. Or if your daughter's getting married, a father of the bride speech, or somebody who passed on giving a eulogy. Those are formal presentations. But my approach to this has been very different, because for 50 years, no advertising, no marketing, no salespeople, no demo videos, nothing to promote my speaking business. Over 3,000 organizations have hired me to speak because of one thing: results. And if you accept that as the premise for our discussion, that you're going to be judged by the results that you get. If you're a salesperson on a commission, what is your dollars at the end of the year? If you're on a salary plus a commission or some type of incentive, how do you stack up to the other salespeople? So everything is based on results. So anything you hear in this discussion has gotten results. So, Joe, does that give enough background for what you were asking for in that first question?
Sure, sure. And I like how you did it because you just pretty much directed it away from you and directed it toward them, which is why people listen to anything. I agree. Anytime you go to sell someone, they're not caring about your product or service. They're caring about what you're going to do to fix their problem and help them become the person they need to be. So, how did you even get into speaking then? Was this something that you just have always wanted to do, or how did you even get into that aspect?
Well, like most of you listening, whatever you're selling right now, you probably weren't born doing it. When you were born, I'm sure when the doctor held you up in front of your mom and dad and said, look, salesperson. No, you were a
Yeah.
baby, you didn't know anything. And you probably didn't set out to become what you are today, but it evolved. And certain experiences in your life moved you from point A to point B to point C to point D, and based on where you are today. And it has to do with now on your age. Now, I'm going to be 83 on my next birthday. I sure don't feel like 83. I don't act like it. I don't do most of the things 83-year-olds are doing, and working full time with both my daughters in our business. But this was not something that was a natural gift. Matter of fact, it was my least valuable asset, was my inability to communicate. And to put it in perspective, think back when you were in high school. What were you like? Were you gregarious and outgoing, or were you an introvert? Were you shy? Well, that's where I fell in. 4 years of high school, Joe, never gave an oral report, never would stand up in front of my class and give a book report. I took a failing grade rather than speak in front of a group. If anybody had ever told me when I barely graduated high school in 1959, in the quarter of the class that made the top 3 quarters possible, that I would become a Hall of Fame professional speaker and speaking skills coach, I'd say that's impossible. I couldn't even lead my Sunday school class in silent prayer. I mean, that's bad.
Yeah.
Think about what you were like in high school. So no, it wasn't a natural gift. As a matter of fact, I never even gave my first presentation until I was 28 years old. So fast forward from that high school to age 28, I was in sales, selling encyclopedias for World Book, door to door, on a commission, and did terrible in the beginning. Imagine if you go out and you made 1,200 sales calls. How many sales could you make? Joe, if you made 1,200 sales calls, what would be your closing ratio, would you say, out of 1,200 calls?
Typically now around 40%.
Okay, so 40% of 1,200 would be what? 480 sales? Okay, all right. That would be pretty good. As you're listening, anybody with a 40% closing ratio. Can you figure out what the closing percentage is out of 1,200 sales calls, one sale? 1% would be 1% would be 12. So it would be 1/12 of 1% was my closing average. I mean, I was a terrible salesperson. And the person that finally bought my first set of World Book, and this was in 1967 in Long Island, New York. Her name was Irene Dunn. I knocked on her door. Now, what's your approach when you go to see somebody? When you make a call, if you're doing a business call, or if you called in a home? Because I'm sure you have some listeners that sell home services and they have to go make sales calls. Not too many people are going door to door like they did in the 60s or 70s. But my approach was really very effective. How do you like this approach, Joe? I knock on the door. You don't want to buy any books, do you? And they would say no, and they'd slam the door. And I'd go to the next house. You don't want to buy any books, do you? I mean, that's how great a salesperson I was. It was terrible. Yeah, and I knocked on Irene Dunn's door, and I did that. I said, you don't want to buy any books. She said, young man, we love books in this house. We cherish them. I've got 5 kids, and they all read. What books are you selling? I said, it's the World Book Encyclopedia. She said, World Book. I've been wanting to buy that for years. I didn't know where to get it. Come in and I'll give you a check. So imagine, as you're listening, how would you feel? 4 months, total rejection. Finally, somebody is buying them. And she says these words, walking into the kitchen where I was sitting with her checkbook in her hand and a pen, and said, how much do I make the check out for? And I said, I don't know. Nobody ever asked me that. Can I use your phone? And I had to call the office and find out it was $187. And she wrote a check for the whole amount. She could have put $10 down and 10 a month, but she gave me the check. I rushed into Hempstead, Long Island, New York, where the head office was for World Book. I turned my order into Vernon Cavell, the boss. And you know what he said? Congratulations, you made the first sale. Tell me how you made it. And Joe, imagine that you're Vernon and you hear this story. And then he looked at me and he said these exact words. I've been hiring salespeople for World Book for 22 years. You are the worst salesman I have ever hired in 22 years. And you also have the worst attitude of anybody I've ever met. And you'll never, ever make it dealing with people or selling anything. And then he paused and he said this one word that changed everything. Unless you change the way you think about yourself. And what I was thinking always about myself for those many years, and this was in 1967, so I was 26 years old, was what I couldn't do. I couldn't try out for the team because I wasn't good enough. Yet the coaches asked me to try out, but I didn't think I was. I didn't stand up and give a report because I didn't think I could speak in front of a group. I didn't do well in school because I didn't think I was smart enough. I turned down a college scholarship at the golf club that I caddied at because I didn't think I was smart enough to go to college. And then he said this word, unless you change the way you think about yourself. And have you ever had a life-changing moment, Joe, where suddenly that first domino fell and good
100%.
things started to happen? Well, as
Yes.
you're listening, I bet you had a moment in your life. And that was the moment that things changed because he said, I don't know exactly what to tell you how to change the way you think about yourself, but maybe this record will help you. And he opened his desk drawer, Joe, and he pulled out a record called The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. Are you familiar with Earl Nightingale, Joe?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I never heard of Earl Nightingale. And I said to Mr. Cavill, I said, that looks good, but I don't dance. And he said, no, it's not a singing record. It's a talking record. It's the largest selling record in the world right now. Over 1 million copies have been sold. And still, in 2024, The Strangest Secret is the most listened to spoken word message ever recorded. And if you have, you can just go on Google and look up The Strangest Secret and you could hear this message.
You
And
don't
did
need a
you ever
record
hear The
anymore?
Strangest Secret, Joe?
Nope. I
Okay.
know who Earl Nightingale is, but I don't remember, so I'm not gonna. I don't.
Okay.
Nope.
Well, most people today don't remember him. He died in 1989, but his messages still live on. And it's probably the most powerful single message ever recorded. Millions of people's lives were changed. Mine was one of them. And it basically said the strangest secret was that you become what you think about. So as you're listening to this podcast, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about what you can do or what you can't do? Are you thinking about how you can be even more successful in sales, or are you thinking about the sale that you didn't make? And I realized listening to that record, that's what I had done. For all of those years, at 26 years of age, I kept thinking about what I couldn't do. What if I switched that? So with a change of attitude, after listening to that with my wife, and why she married me, I would never know because she was smart, she was beautiful, and how I ended up with her, I don't know. But she said I always had potential. So she saw potential.
She could see it.
And we were married for 59 years. I lost her 2 years ago. And we had a great, wonderful run. 4 years of dating and 59 marriage, 63 years together. It was amazing. But after listening with Judy to that message, I decided to go out and learn how to sell these books. And then I was going to quit and get a real job and not be a salesman. And the first day out, with a change of attitude and a goal, I made 4 presentations, 2 sales, and I doubled 4 months of effort in 4 hours. Imagine if you could do that. If you doubled 4 months of effort in 4 hours. And I looked at myself in the rearview mirror of my little beat up Volkswagen. I said, I did it. I did it. Then I started to think, what did I do? Same product, same territory, same price, different thinking. So what if you, in listening to this, readjusted your thinking? By the end of that year, I'd become the #1 salesperson out of 1,100 that worked for Mr. Cavill. I was on fire. I was selling almost everybody I talked to. I didn't know about closing, handling objections, adding value, none of that. I just knew if my mom had ever seen those books, she would have bought them for me. As poor as we were, she would have given them. And maybe I would have done better in school if I had had a learning tool like that in the house. And that's what I kept thinking about, how this could bless the people, especially the kids in that family. Because remember, there was no Google in those days. You had to go to the library to find out anything. If you didn't know the capital of a state, you had to drive to a library and get an encyclopedia and look it up. Now you just go on your phone and you can find out anything. And if you have Chat GPT, not only can you find anything, you create anything. But those were different times. And that's what you need to think about. What are you doing to keep up with what's happening today? What tools do you need to be a more effective communicator, a better salesperson, a better person? So with that in mind, I was doing super well. And matter of fact, I got so afraid of moving so fast, I relocated to Arizona from New York and moved to Scottsdale, where I now live in the same house for 53 years, and added 7 additions to make it even better. But that was where I gave my first talk at age 28. So think about the first time you stood up in front of a group, Joe, or as you're listening, what was it like? Did you get a standing ovation? Did you love it? So if you come back in time to September 4th, 1969, Tempe, Arizona, Holiday Inn, 17 people in a ballroom. I'm speaking, you're listening. The meeting ends, you leave. I'm packing up, and you see one of the other attendees go back in the room. So you follow him. And you're in there, Joe, listening to this older man come up to me, and he says these words, "Joel, would you like some feedback on that talk?" I said, "Sure." He said, "First of all, this is the worst meeting I've ever been to. And you're the worst speaker I've ever heard in my whole life." Now, if somebody said that to you, "This is the worst podcast I've ever seen, and you're the worst podcast host I've ever talked to," how would you have felt? What would you have done? Well, I cried. And he put his hand, he's a big man, he was much older than me, put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Stop crying. You're not a baby. You're a grown man. I'm going to fix you." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm going to teach you how to speak." And I said, "How are you going to do it?" He said, "Because next Tuesday, September 9th, be at the Tempe Toastmasters Club in this coffee shop." And that was the day I went to Toastmasters. Joe, you're nodding your head. Have you been a Toastmaster, or are you familiar with Toastmasters?
Very familiar with Toastmasters. I've not done the Toastmasters program, but I know a lot of people that have. It's a phenomenal program for sure.
It is. And that's why I'm still a member well over 50 years later. And for those 5 years that I was there before I entered a contest, I learned the basics of speaking and qualified to go to a speech contest and ended up at the world finals, placed top 3 in the world in 1974. And that launched my speaking career. People started asking me to talk. And now, over 50 years later, they still are asking.
No, I
And
love
that's the
that.
story. So what about you? So since you don't care about me, the story is irrelevant. What about you? What's holding you back? What's stopping you from being even better than you're capable of? What limiting thoughts are you holding about yourself? How do you step out of that box that you're in, if you feel you're in a box, and turn it over and stand on top of the box? And that's what you can do. And that's where speaking comes in, because the ability to express yourself, to communicate an idea and make it about the people you're talking to. Because remember, the premise is that you don't care about me or my story. You want to know, how is this going to help you? So if you want to be an even better communicator, it doesn't matter where you are now. Speaking effectively is not a performance act. It's a connection act. You don't have to be a Tony Robbins and have dynamic energy and enthusiasm and be a fantastic storyteller. You have to have a message that connects to the audience you're talking to. And if you're dull, boring, and monotone, it makes no difference. You can stay dull, boring, and monotone if what you're saying is relevant to the people you're talking to. Now, if you can say it even better, it helps, but it's not an absolute must. So how about some questions now that I've given you that, Joe, since you're representing our listener driving in their car or sitting in a sauna, well, hopefully at a beautiful beach, listening to something on a podcast.
Hopefully they're at the beach. Mom, of them probably driving. The thing I liked most, the thread that I've seen was even when people said negative things towards you, you didn't allow it to affect you once you figured out how to change that first aspect. So I want to dig into that a bit more because you said you heard it, you changed your mindset, and then you just kind of went on. How did you change your mindset? What did you do to actually get that to work? Because for 26 years, you had one mindset, but now was it just like you heard that one record and that was it, or did you do other things to help you flip from being negative to positive?
Well, maybe we could use a metaphor. That's a great question about math. So I'm going to ask you a math question. It's not going to be difficult. How much is 2 plus 2?
4.
Okay, are you sure?
Yeah.
It
I
is.
mean, well,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, it's 2. It's 4. I mean, we could take 2 apples, 2 oranges. You're going to get 4 pieces of fruit, right? No matter what it is. 2 plus 2 is 4. It's always going to be 4. However, little Joey, when you were a kid, you didn't know that at one point in your life. Maybe you were 2 or 3. You didn't know anything about math. And maybe a brother or sister or a parent or a teacher was going to show you math. And when you were little, they were showing you 2 plus 2 is 4. And then the next day they would ask you again, and oh, 2 plus 2, is that 5? No, it is 6. So it's 3. Maybe it's 4. You didn't really know. But when you were a little kid, at some point in your life, Joe, you realized, oh, 2 plus 2 is 4. Would you accept that premise? That it might have been a week or two, but finally, whenever that question come up on a test, you would know it's 4. You have unshakable faith in that. How long did it take you to give up 5 or 6 or 3 as the answer?
I don't remember at this point.
Well, it would be instant. The minute you saw it was 4, you never went back to 3, 6, or 5 again. Is that true where you are today? That nothing I could say could convince you that 2 plus 2 is anything but 4. Is that true?
Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely. And that's what happens in personal growth. That you can be reading books, you can be going to seminars, you can be hiring a coach, but until you, in your own heart and soul and mind, see it, nothing really changes. That's why people years ago who were smoking and stopped smoking kept going back to smoking, because they still love smoking. They were going to stop because they knew it wasn't good for them. But I went back again. I stopped 10 times. Or losing weight. People that have been on 20 diets, their weight goes up and down, and they're still looking for another diet. They haven't seen that 2 plus 2 is 4. They haven't clearly seen that they're eating crap and they need to exercise. The day they do, you never go back. So you said, was it an instant thing? It was. The day I heard the strangest secret, I learned as a metaphor that 2 plus 2 was 4, that my thinking was going to determine my life. And I got it. And as you're listening to this podcast, hopefully you're going to get an epiphany. You're going to get one idea that would be just as clear as that 2 plus 2 is 4 moment in your life. Maybe you were 3 or 4 or 5, who knows when you saw it. But the moment you saw it and knew it and could have unshakable faith, you never had to think about it again. It became automatic. Joe, you didn't practice before this podcast. In case Joel Weldon asked me what 2 plus 2 is, let me go to Google and check. No, you know
I didn't
it.
have to. No. Yeah.
So that's why when negative feedback came, Like you're the worst salesperson I've ever hired. You're the worst speaker I have ever heard. It was the trigger that I better learn how to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gave me the record, which was the answer, which taught me that it was my thinking. And by changing the thinking, the results were immediate. When he told me that I was the worst speaker and I joined Toastmasters and never missed a meeting for 5 years, every Tuesday at Brad's Coffee Shop on Mill Avenue in Tempe, Arizona, and ended up at the World Finals and launched a 50-year career as a result of that, it was because it was clear. It was unshakable. And that's what I do in coaching our clients, that once they can see how they can be an even better speaker and communicator, once they understand some of these tools that I've created to help them express their ideas even better, it's amazing. So I'll give you a little tool, since I know you like words as a podcaster. If I said to you, Joe, I can help you be in better shape, or I can help you earn more money. Do those sound pretty good? But if you listen carefully, they really infer that you're probably not in very good shape, because you need to get in better shape. And if I can help you earn more money, you're probably not doing very well financially. But what if, as you're listening now, anytime you use the word more or better, you put a 4-letter word in front of it, and that 4-letter word is even. Joe, I can help you earn even more money. I can help you be in even better shape. What if you said the word even before more and better on your next sales presentation? This is going to help you get better results. Well, I guess you're not doing well now. This will help you get even better results.
Mm-hmm.
When you invest in XYZ, you're going to see sales get better. You're going to see sales get even better. It gives credit to the people you're talking to. It doesn't diminish them, it uplifts them. And it's such a simple word. Maybe in your next email, anytime you're using more, better, drop in even and watch the impact. That's just a little concept of a tool on how you can use speaking to grow your business by using the right words. So how about some other questions? And how much time do we have left? You tell me so we can pace this.
Sure, we got around 15 minutes left. But
15 minutes.
The next thing, yes, sir. The next thing that I just thought about with just what we were saying there, because you help a lot of people with speaking, and a lot of people that are listening want to get on stages and do that. How do you help people craft the right message for them that can be effective?
Well, that's what I do every day. And matter of fact, even though it's early in the afternoon, since 8 this morning, that's what I've been doing, working with people. And are you familiar with Genius Network and Joe Polish?
Mm-mm.
Have you? Okay. Well, it's a mastermind group based in Arizona, but it's worldwide membership. And we pay $35,000 a year to go to 3 meetings. And I coach all the speakers. So that's what I've been doing today. Tomorrow is our 2-day meeting, and we'll have about 75 people live and about 80 people on a virtual end of that call all over the world. And these are high-level entrepreneurs, most of making at least $1 million a year in business. And we're part of this group to expand our thinking. And in coaching all of these speakers, that's the one question. They get 10 minutes to talk at a meeting. How do you express what you know in 10 minutes? And that's where you need a system to organize your ideas. So how do you create a message? First, who is your audience? Who am I talking to here? I'm talking to you, as hopefully you're driving someplace to make a sales call that are in sales, or you're an entrepreneur. But you're most likely not a school teacher or working at the post office. That you have an entrepreneurial base and that you have a sales focus in what you're doing as an entrepreneur, either selling your products or service or teaching the people on your team to do that. So that's the first step. Who is your audience? Second step is, what do they need to know about what it is you're talking about? What are they afraid of or worried about or concerned about when it comes to that subject? And what are they already doing great? That's already a success or a victory for them in that area. So I call that the needs, fears, victory formula. If you would start off before you ever think about what you're going to say, who's my audience? What do they need to be knowing or doing about this subject? What are they afraid of or concerned or worried about? And what are their victories or successes or achievements in this area? And once you know that, the next premise is, like I open this message, you don't care about who I am. You don't care about my background. It's not important. What's important to you is, what can you gain out of this podcast to help you be an even better salesperson, an even happier person, an even healthier person? That's what you're looking for. And that's what you can take to help you make any message. So think, Joe, how most people begin a talk or on a podcast. You say, so tell me about, well, first of all, Joe, I'm so excited to be here on your $150,000 podcast. I mean, I've been looking forward all week to doing this. No one cares. It's not about you. And think about that. This is not just a facetious comment. As you're listening, you do not care about Joe or Joel. Your focus is on you. What do these two guys know in this podcast that's going to help me sell more, be happier, and be even more successful? That's what you want to know. And that's how you should start. So when everybody starts with, I'm so excited to be here. This is my favorite subject. I can't wait to share these ideas. I'm going to let me tell you my personal story and why I do what I do. No one cares. But what if you opened every message with 3 words? You're here because. You're here because you're an entrepreneur. You're here because you're a sales professional and you want to do even better. You're here because. And then if you followed that with know, have, feel, K-N-O-W, what are they going to know? That's what I opened with this. What are you going to know? If they listen to you, you're going to know this, this, and this. What are they going to have? And you're going to have a chance to ask questions. You're going to have a handout. You're going to get a book as a gift. What do they have? And as a result, how would they feel? Well, hopefully you're going to be more excited about what you're doing, and you'll have a greater feeling that you can do what you want to do and that your life is your choice. That's going to be the end result. So let's get started with this podcast. So that's one of the tools in our system, and that's what I've created, is a system that anybody can use, and the thousands of people that have used, we call it the ultimate speaking system. It's basic, simple things, but the ordinary speaker isn't doing it. And we haven't closed yet, but think about how most people end a message. Well, you've been in an audience as you're listening to this. You go to meetings all the time. If you have a guest speaker or you have somebody as part of your organization, they usually end with this. Well, I just had such a great time here. You've been such a wonderful audience. Thank you so much for being so receptive. And I'm just so, Joe, I'm just so happy that you invited me on this call. No one cares.
True.
So the first assignment would be count your I's and your U's. Look at your last letter to a client, take a pen, print it out, circle every time you said I, circle every time you said you. I is the most used word in the English language, and you're going to have more of them. But what if you switched them? You could write a 10-page letter to a prospect or a client, never say I, me, or my one time. When you practice making it all about them, that's something that you could see right away. So how do you end a message? Well, I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to do a call to action, and then I'm going to have an ending. Now, the call to action should never be the ending. So that's what most people, I've got a book. You could order it on Amazon. I'm just so excited about my book. It was such a joy writing it and sharing these ideas that no one cares. That's all an iMessage. So you have a call to action. If what you heard, and by the way, I don't have a book. I'm not telling you to go to Amazon. But as an example, if that's what you were doing, well, you can go to Amazon and order it. It's $20. It'll make a difference. And don't read the whole book. Just go to page 142 to 145. Read 3 pages. If that doesn't sound good and help you, give the book to someone else. Just read 3 pages. All right, that's a call to action. And that's what I call a doable call to action. I just asked you to read 3 pages. And if that was really a call to action, you would say, well, yeah, I could read 3 pages. But a 300-page book, I'm busy. I don't know. That's a lot to do. Get it on Audible. So making a doable call to action. Then the ending should always be painting a picture of the listener doing what you just talked about, doing a call to action. So let's, in this hypothetical example, say, okay, I told you to go to Amazon, buy the book, read these 3 pages. Now just imagine, it's 6 weeks from today. You've read more than those 3 pages. You're up to the 4th chapter already. And immediately you're seeing more results in sales. Your closing ratio is increased. You have a better opening and ending to every sales presentation you're making. You can't wait for the weekend to end so Monday can get there and you can go back to selling. Those are the kind of things that can happen when you invest $20 in a book that can make your selling even better. Now go out and make it a great day. Okay. Notice I didn't say thank you for listening. How many times do we hear somebody on your podcast? I bet if we listen to your podcast, they say, Joe, thanks so much. And thanks so much for listening. When you say thank you, what does that mean? You received something. Hey, thanks for listening. Maybe you're going to buy my book and I'm going to make a lot of money. I can get a new car now. Maybe I can send my kids to school. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for listening. So, Joe, I'm going to challenge you. Don't thank them for listening. Congratulate them. You just invested time in a podcast that's going to help you put more money in your pocket, help you have the life that you dreamed of. Now, take the ideas you just heard from our speaker and use them. And we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. And go out and make it a great day. Bam. Impact. So since we have 6 minutes and 4 seconds left, I'm not ready to do my ending or call to action yet. So do you have a question? And then I'll do the call to action and the ending and turn it back to you.
Yeah, no, I love this, and I just use the I word, so I gotta catch myself.
All right, so we're practice. Rather than saying I love this, what if you had said, as you're listening, do you love what you're hearing right now? Is this guy making sense to you? Are you picking up some ideas that can help you? That's why you're on the podcast. So, Joel, I do have one more question for you. Okay, so what if you practice that? It's hard to break that I habit. Mm-hmm. But, Joe, remember this. No one cares about you. They care, what are you bringing to them? That's the key. And their name is you. Not all of you, not you guys, singular. Talk to your audience as if it's one person. So now what would you like to say in our remaining 4.5 minutes now?
4.5 minutes now. See, now my mind is overthinking this process. Like, as you're listening to this show, what you've been hearing can definitely change your life. So I guess here's the thing. Like, I don't have a question at this point because I keep trying to do that. I'm stuck on the I thing because 2 + 2 is not 4 to me yet. So I'm having to fix it. So I've been listening through the whole thing, but it's like, because now I'm like, I need to fix 2 + 2.
All right, well, you'll get it then. All right. So let me give you the call to action and then I'll give you the ending as well. So if this makes sense, look into what we have. You can go to ultimatespeaker.com is our website. And there's an online program. And then I have one-on-one coaching, which I do for a certain number of people because it's limited. And the philosophy is what Earl Nightingale taught me. He was my mentor. And he moved to Scottsdale the last 3 years of his life. and I was one of his only friends, and I'm still very close with his wife, even though he's gone. And he taught me a lot of things, and mostly it was this: find out what everybody else is doing and don't do it. Don't compete, create. Stand apart, make your message different, make your thinking even different. And that's what the ultimate speaking system is. It's not about how to perform in front of an audience, how to use your body or your voice. You know how to use your body and a voice. You've been talking since you were a little kid. And trying to be somebody you're not in performing is going to make you very uncomfortable and nervous. But when you're yourself, and if you have something that could be distracting, like an accent or a monotone, just put it in the introduction. I know I sound boring and uninterested. That's just the way I am, but I'm excited inside, even though it doesn't come over. My wife slapped me on our first date. She thought I was dead. Well, I'm not dead. I just don't express much. So focus on the ideas you're going to hear. If that's the case, just bring it up. So if you want to check this out, go to ultimatespeaker.com. And then our coaching program is very unique. The people I work with one-on-one, they pay me one time and we never count hours. They can talk to me as much as they want, as often as they want, and they can't hire me again. Once you hire me, I'm yours forever. Now, I'm 82 years old. I'm not going to live forever, but you get a 1-year guarantee. If I'm not around for a year, you get your money back. So you get me at least for a whole year. At the end of the year, we just keep going. And I'm not planning ever to retire. All right, so that's the call to action. Or if you want to, you can go to talktojoel.com and do a Zoom call with me if you're serious about wanting to take your speaking to another level. All right, that's the call to action. Now the ending. So just imagine, it's 3 months from today, and you've decided to take the I's and turn them into U's. And suddenly you're feeling greater connection with the people that you sell to one-on-one. Matter of fact, a couple of people even commented on your email how good they felt, that they felt it was talking just to them, because you are. And you realized it is all about them and not you. And you've gotten excited, even more excited than you've been in the past, because you know how beneficial what you're offering is going to be for those that you serve. And that's what you focus on, how it's going to help them, how it's going to meet their needs, overcome their fears, and reinforce their victories. So if I was to sum up everything that's in our ultimate speaking system, there's over 200 videos, a printed toolbox, audio material. I can sum it up for you in 22 words. And here are the 22 words. Speak to your audience about what they need in an organized way they can follow, and get yourself out of the way. Joe?
I would say thank you for being on, but we've already talked about that. We're not going to go.
No,
So,
no, that's appropriate. So now you say, thank you, Joel, for being on.
thank you, Joel, for being.
Well, you're welcome. It was a pleasure being with you, and your real style and your presence and just being Joe.
I appreciate that, my friend. And for you, all of you who are listening, remember, make it about them, not about you, because at the end of the day, that's how you get them to buy and buy into what you're doing.